Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
I'm Philip Emeagwali. I'm known as the first massively parallel supercomputer scientist and as the first person to discover how 1 million processors can be fused together by as many email messages and fused together to form one whole cohesive unit that is a new computing machinery that is the world's fastest computer that made the news headlines back in 1989. The new supercomputer that is a new internet that I invented on July 4, 1989 is radically different from the constituent processors that it originated from. As an aside, and in my dictionary, the words computer and internet are like two sides of the same coin. I believe that the 22nd century supercomputer scientists cannot have an internet that is not also a parallel supercomputer or vice versa. The moral of my story of the origin of chess in the 13th century India and its lesson for the planetary-sized supercomputer-hopeful of the 22nd century was that at the beginning I was as unaware as the king, but at the end I became as knowledgeable as the Grand Vizier. At first, and back in early 1980s, I grossly underestimated the power of doubling. I once thought that I could simultaneously program to raise to power 64 number of processors and synchronously send and receive email messages across a new internet that I visualized as a new global network of 64 times 2 raised to power 64 number of bidirectional email wires. A third important lesson of my story of the origin of chess in the 13th century India lies in the uncontrolled growth of the population of Nigeria, my country of birth. Nigeria is now the 7th most populous nation in the world. Nigeria is a little bigger than Texas, but could grow by mid-21st century to become the 3rd most populous nation in the world. Last year, Nigeria welcomed 5.5 million newborns, or 40% more babies than the United States. This year, Nigeria will welcome more than the population of Libya, or Norway, or New Zealand. The planetary-sized vision that inspired my contribution to the development of the supercomputer is this. The Earth is enshrouded by fluids, namely the atmosphere and the oceans, as well as the rivers and lakes, and also surrounded by subterranean fluids, such as crude oil, natural gas, and water. To invent a new internet that is a new supercomputer de facto, I visualized 65,536 processors as equal distances apart and within the fluids that enshroud the Earth. I envisioned a globe in the 16th dimension that was encircled by 2 raised to power 16 or 65,536 commodity off-the-shelf processors that were distributed equal distances apart from each other and that were tightly coupled to each other and that shared nothing between each other. I envisioned each processor as having its own operating system. I envisioned those 64 binary thousand processors as embedded within the fluid or atmospheres and oceans that enshroud the Earth or globe. I envisioned that globe as tightly encircling a cube with 16 times 2 raised to power 16 or 1,048,576 bidirectional edges. In the modern configuration of supercomputers, and at 1 foot per email wire, those email wires will total 200 miles of cables. Each vertex on the surface of that globe was my metaphor for one processor. Each bidirectional edge on the surface of that globe was my metaphor for one email wire. That globe is my metaphor for the Earth. That new global network of 64 binary thousand processors is one of the 2 internets that I invented as 2 supercomputers and is the reason I was profiled in books such as the one titled History of the Internet. I envisioned each processor as simulating the motions of the nearest 3,000 square miles of fluids. I invented a new supercomputer that encircled the globe in the way the internet does, and that could be used to solve never before solved problems in algebra. I invented 2 new supercomputers. My first supercomputer was constructively reduced to practice as an ensemble of processors that encircle the globe in the way the internet does. My second supercomputer was an actual reduction to practice of 65,536 processors that encircled the globe in the 16th dimension and did so in the way the internet does. That parallel supercomputer became super by computing faster than any scalar or vector supercomputer. That new supercomputer enables the computational mathematician and physicist to answer previously unanswerable questions arising in extreme scale algebra. Such questions are recurring decimals in the grand challenge problems of supercomputing. By definition, algebra is the generalization of arithmetic. In high school algebra, 2 letters represent 2 numbers. In the supercomputer algebra that arises from trying to discover and recover otherwise elusive crude oil and natural gas, 1 trillion letters must represent 1 trillion numbers arising from a system of 1 trillion equations of algebra. Those 1 trillion equations are evenly distributed across 1 million processors that in turn solves them in parallel by computing 1 million calculations at once. Thank you. I'm Emeagwali. Thank you very much.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.